Recently, people told me in Quora that there is a verse in Quran that says that Allah has given this land to the Jews. So why are the Muslims claiming this land is what the question was posed to me, to which I was not able to really come up with an answer. So since you guys are knowledgeable about these aspects, it would really help me if you could provide me with an answer.
Did they quote to you the verse?
I think they did, but I don't really remember the verse right now.
Okay, because we would need to look at the verse to be able
Yeah,
to.
don't believe everything that everyone tells you. Yeah, if someone is making an argument to you uh, based upon a reference from either the Quran, Hadith, whatever it is, the first step is, okay, show me where it is saying what you claim that it's saying. You should check, because often people build a very big building 10 stories high on a grain of sand, and as soon as you look at that, it falls down, and the conversation is over. So that's uh, the first step of the position. So I would suggest. Do you understand what the verse might be?
Uh, I can actually I can actually pull up the verse if I'm logging onto my Quora account.
Yeah, please. Quora account. This is that where you found it? The contention.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
So just give me.
why are you on Quora, brother?
So Quora is like a space where you answer these questions of these people.
Yeah, yeah.
So I've created a space where I'm posting all these Islamic posts to educate people about Islam. So this question was posed to me, and I was not having an answer to this question. Uh, is it necessary? How can I'm not
The
able
problem
to
with
find
problem
the
with places like Quora is actually it's random people asking random questions and generally random people answering them. It's literally like there is no way that you're going to get any good information from these places, Quora, Reddit, wherever that might be. Amongst one thing that is true, there will be 100 things that are false. And it's probably one of the if you're trying to, I don't know what the purpose of being there is, but unless you're there to try and give information to people, I wouldn't be getting information from there. And you're young, you've got a lot of energy. You can what I would advise is to utilize your energy to develop yourself, so that you become, inshallah, a force for good within the ummah, rather than I'm talking from experience, spending a lot of time having debates online. I mean, I spent many years doing this sort of thing before learning actually this is not a productive way to use your time. So I definitely would advise to try and you know get yourself into some form of development where in a year's time, 2 years time, 3 years time, you come out with a set of knowledge that is verified and authentic, and something that gives you qualifications to go further and then to make a bigger impact in the Muslim community, in the ummah around the world, rather than uh, you know uh, spending your energy on midnight debates on a keyboard, on a forum that is not useful. This is my general advice. But did you come across that verse, brother? And what are your thoughts on
uh,
Quora while the brother's looking, guys?
Yeah, I found it on Quora. So what I've found is I've found verse chapter 5, verse 20 to 21,
Let's have a
where
look.
basically it says, "And remember when Moses said to his people, 'O my people, remember God's favor upon you when he raised prophets from among you, made you sovereign, and gave you what he had never given anyone in the world.'" Verse 21, "O my people, enter the holy land, which God has destined for you to enter, and do not turn back, or else you will become losers." So is that the verse? Does that ring a bell?
yes, it was something similar to that. I
Yeah.
think that's the
Yeah, this in no way means that this land is given to them as a permanent abode and it doesn't belong to
Yeah.
anybody else. It doesn't justify the killing and the removing of people
Carry
who
on
are.
reading the verse, Abbas. So continue to read, because actually this is a lesson.
Yeah,
There's a lesson in these verses. So
yeah,
Abbas,
yeah.
continue to read.
So verse 22, then it says, "They replied, 'O Moses, there is an enormous powerful people there, so we will never be able to enter it until they leave. If they do, then we will enter.'" Verse 23, to God-fearing men who had been blessed by God, said, surprise them through the gate. If you do, you will certainly prevail. Put your trust in God if you are true believers. If you are truly believers. Yet they said, O Moses, still we will never enter as long as they remain there. So go both you and your Lord and fight. We are staying right here. So do you want me to read further?
Yeah, I'll read. So Moses pleaded, this is verse 25, My Lord, I have no control over anyone except myself and my brother. So set us apart from the rebellious people. God replied, this land is forbidden for them for 40 years, during which they will wander the land, so do not grieve for the rebellious people. So actually what this is saying is that Allah gave them a place to go and stay. It's not you're not given the land to keep and it's only yours and no one else can live there. This is completely not the case. What the verse is saying is that you've been go into this land, and they were afraid to go in there because there were people there, and they wanted Moses to go and fight. So Allah forbade them from entering the land for 40 years. So this is the opposite of the claim. The claim is God gave them the land for themselves. Actually, this is telling you the lesson that when people are stubborn in the sight of God, God forbade them for entering the land for a generation. 40 years is a generation. So in the time of Musa alayhi salam, when you say that they were given the land, they were not able to enter the land. They entered after Musa alayhi salam passed away. So this verse is not making the claim that the person is suggesting that they're making, that the land was given specifically to them and no one else can live in that land. It's not there. So do you understand now that the grain of sand they built the 10-story building on is not present?
Right, right. That really makes sense. So I think.
Yes,
Sorry,
please.
go on.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So since the generation that was forbidden to go and settle in those lands, so this by no means tells them that this is their eternal abode and that they have
Yeah.
the authority to drive Palestinians out of their land.
Yeah, so it's not definitely. First of all, it's not. This is not that you can go there and kill everyone else and don't let anyone else be there. This is not there. So even the idea of this is absurd.
Yeah.
The land is promised to the people who were at the time the believers, and the people who actually the people that went into that land after this generation, the Palestinians are their descendants who've become Muslims. And this idea that somehow this, this justifies what's going, it doesn't make sense at all. And there's nothing like that says that this is land given to you exclusively against other people. You can do whatever you like, and you have to drive them out. It's not true at all. And people using this to justify it, I think they're misrepresenting the reality, because Allah is not unjust in the sense that you're not going to choose a specific race of people to what's the way of putting this, to allow them to be arrogant, obstinate, and oppressive to other people. That wouldn't happen that way. So the descendants directly of the people who were there in the time of Musa alayhi salam, or after the time of Musa alayhi salam, and are the believers who then many of them went on to become Muslims when the Prophet peace be upon him had come. So this verse is specifically talking about a test given to them. Go into this land where you can reside there. They were afraid because of other people, and they said to Moses, "You go and fight." So then Allah forbids them from entering the land, and as a punishment.
Yes, brother. Really
And
thank you
the
for.
thing is, Brother Muhammad, also we have to remember that why did the Prophet ﷺ say that the Muslim armies will conquer Syria, they will conquer Iraq, they will conquer Jerusalem, Constantinople? All of this was mentioned. Otherwise, the Prophet would, ﷺ, this is it's an odd argument, because firstly, they don't believe the Quran is divine. So they're using something they don't believe in to justify something that they want to do. So that in itself, to me, seems odd. But why would the Prophet have instructed the Muslims to enter Jerusalem? Why would the second Caliph, Umar Khattab, radiallahu anhu, why would he conquer Jerusalem? Would he not know that the Prophet said, don't enter this land? This land is reserved for the Jews. The We mustn't enter this land. No, of course not. The second Caliph of Islam, Umar Khattab, he entered Jerusalem. And the interesting thing is, and mashallah, we learn this through history, that he was the one who reinstated Jews in that land, because the Christians who had that land had killed and had evicted all the Jews from that land.
Yes.
And when Umar Khattab asked the Christian, where are the Jews? He said, oh, we killed them and we got rid of them. We kicked them out of the land. And he said, you know, and Roy Casagranda, the historian, he says that Umar Khattab, he says, no, you can't do this. And he appointed somebody to go, and one of the converts, Jewish converts to Islam, he appointed him to go and find 80 families, Jewish families, to bring them back into Jerusalem and to settle there. So, you know, all these things that you hear. But Brother Muhammad, one thing I want to just quickly tell you very quickly before Brother Jordan, if he wants to say anything, inshallah, comes in. As Dr. Imran has already said, sites like Quora, sites like, you know, even going on to the sort of other social media sites and what have you, to debate people often come up with arguments that are completely fabricated, and they're lies or they're absolute exaggerations. There might be sometimes a kernel of truth, and I would advise you, learn your religion, but do not go to places where there is effectively people who are whose job it is almost to just cause doubts in people and cause confusion, and they're not sincere in relaying knowledge. They're only trying to bring their argument forward, even if it is a fabricated argument. And unless you have the time or you have the knowledge, which in this case you have clearly shown that you didn't have, this is why you came here, you know, don't go to those places, because you'll end up festering doubts in yourself, when in fact what you should be doing is learning your religion first. But Dr. Imran, Jordan, please do. Dr. Jordan.
Yeah, please. I'd like to recommend a book to you, Brother Mohammed, by Hamza Sources. It's called Unveiling Tyranny, and you can get it free PDF online. And I think, like the brothers have said, careful of what sources you go to, because these Reddits, these Quoras, right? I remember when I was looking into the Uyghurs issue, and we found that China was spending millions, giving people millions to go and troll in these chat rooms, pose as Muslim with Muslim names, and spread misinformation, because remember, Israel are losing the social media war. People are seeing them for what they are. So you really need to be careful with these things and where you get your information from. It's really important to make sure your sources are credible. And the other thing I'd say quickly is, even if what you were saying was true, we're talking about ethnic cleansing. We're talking about, Professor Norman Finkelstein talked about human rights. He said there were so many human rights abuses in the 75 years that you could fill up a medium-sized library. We're talking about humiliation of a people and ethnic genocide of a people with no justification. So even if your information was, let's saying I bought your information, it's still, this issue is way past that, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these people have, geneticists have done DNA, screening of certain people, and the Canaanite people that were there 3,500 years ago. Harvard and other, recognized, respected, establishments have done the DNA testing and things, and they found that the Palestinian people have 50 to 60% DNA from 3,500 years ago, the Canaanite people. And of course, we can't go back tens of thousands of years, but the chances are they may well have been there for like 5,000, 7,000 years ago. We don't know how far back they went, but we certainly can trace them back to 3,500, 4,000 years. So, I mean, Jordan is quite right that even if the verse was to say that this is your land, would that then entitle you under any religious doctrine to go and show the lack of humanity to the extent where if you treated animals in many countries in that way, you'd actually get arrested for abuse, and you'd probably go to jail for treating a dog like that. And so there is absolutely no excuse whatsoever. And it's just shameful, really, that people will use this type of argument to somehow justify what they're doing. But Brother Muhammad, I hope that's been helpful.
Just one other thing before we... So the people who are quoting this are probably Christians. in Genesis in the Old Testament, actually the promise is to the seed of Abraham, to Abraham's descendants, which include the Arabs, because the descendants of Abraham's go through Isaac and Ishmael, and so that includes the Arabs as well.
Absolutely.
So this again, it's and you can read that Genesis 15 verse 17 onwards. It will describe this, that who the land is given to. So even them, what they're trying to do is they're trying to get you to buy into their specific ethnic way of looking at people, and they're saying that only this part of these people are given the land. But the reality is actually the Old Testament says the descendants of Abraham. The descendants of Abraham is all the Jews and the Arabs are cousins, essentially, from Ibrahim alayhi salam.
Well,
So
actually, the funny thing, Imran, there is that in Israel, it's actually illegal, I believe, somebody was saying, to do a DNA test.
yeah, subhanallah.
Because the bulk of the Ashkenazi Jews, which make up 75-80% possibly of all Jews, are actually Russian, Italian descendants. They actually don't have the Semitic DNA. And in fact, there are Jews who are on YouTube who've done DNA tests, and they've said they don't have Semitic links to that land. Right?
So
has it just become illegal, Abbas, or has it been for?
Somebody was saying that it's illegal. Apparently, I mean, people can dig out the story. I know that there are other things that are illegal. Like, for example, in Israel, you cannot talk about the Nakba. For example, to talk about the Nakba is illegal in Israel. The Nakba was, of course, in 1948 when they emptied out 500 plus villages and evicted over 780,000 Palestinians, many of whom were raped, killed, murdered as well. It was the catastrophe, as they call it. And it's illegal in Israel to talk about that. If you talk about that, you can get arrested. You can be put into prison because they are literally trying to conceal the evidence and conceal the truth. But of course, you know, that the evidence is out there. You can't, what's out there is out there. They can fool their own people within their communities there by, you know, blocking the media and what have you. But the world knows what's going on. And I mean, it's just nonsense.